The September 10th, 2019 meeting of the Planning Commission for the City of Troy. Welcome everybody. Copies of the agenda for tonight's meeting is available at the entrance of the room. Agendas and minutes of prior meetings are available on the city website. The meeting will be conducted in accordance with the agenda as presented or amended by the Planning Commission. State law establishes planning commissions. The planning commission is comprised of 9 residents appointed to serve their community. Members are appointed by the mayor and confirmed by city council. Other individuals participating in the meeting include representatives of the city planning consultant, Carlisle Wortman Associates, and city attorney. If you wish to address the Planning Commission, please come forward to the podium when recognized and provide your name and address on the sign-in sheet. Please begin your remarks by stating your name for the benefit of the commissioners. All remarks are to address to the Planning Commission, not to anyone else in the room. If you have a cell phone or any other device that may disrupt this meeting, please switch it to silent mode or turn it off. At this time, I ask the Planning Commission Secretary to do the roll call, please.
Mr. Aphidian?
Here.
Ms. Cruz? Mr. Faison? Ms. Fowler?
Here.
Mr. Hudson?
Here.
Mr. Krent?
Here.
Mr. Lambert?
Here.
Mr. Rahman?
Here.
Mr. Tagle?
Here.
Mr. Tadapali?
Here. Would I get a motion to approve tonight's agenda by anyone? Mr. Lambert?
Second.
Second by Mr. Tagle. Roll call, please.
Ms. Fowler?
Here. Yes.
Mr. Hudson?
Yes.
Mr. Krent?
Yes.
Mr. Lambert?
Yes.
Mr. Rahman?
Yes.
Mr. Tagle?
Yes.
Mr. Aphidian?
Yes.
I'd like to get a motion to approve the minutes of our last meeting on August 27th. If there's any changes ahead of time, though, anybody had any changes to make to that? Okay. May I have a motion then for approval of the minutes? To approve. Mr. Aphidian? Second?
Second.
Ms. Fowler? Roll call.
Ms. Fowler?
Yes.
Mr. Hudson?
Yes.
Mr. Krent?
Yes.
Mr. Lambert?
Yes.
Mr. Rahman?
Yes.
Mr. Tagle?
Yes.
Mr. Aphidian?
Yes.
The next item on the agenda is public comment for items not on tonight's agenda. Is there anyone in the audience that has any comments for items not on tonight's agenda? Seeing none, go to the next item. This is preliminary site plan review, file SU 2019-0029, proposed Grace Corner Medical Office, northwest corner of DeQuinta Road and east Square Lake Road, section 1, currently zoned NN, neighborhood node N district.
Can everyone see that? You want me to dim it? It's fine. Okay.
Thank you and good evening. For you tonight is a proposed medical office. It's located in the northwest corner of DeQuinta and East Square Lake. The parcel is approximately 0.67 acres in area. The property is zoned neighborhood node and a medical office is a permitted use. The applicant is proposing to construct a 1-story, 23-foot tall, approximately 5,000 square foot medical office building. Additional site improvements include a 37-space parking lot, landscaping improvements, as well as site lighting improvements. As required by the form-based zoning, the applicant has set the building at the hard corner of DeQuinta and Square Lake, and the applicant has provided a sidewalk along both DeQuinta and Square Lake as well as around the building. With regards to access, access site is provided with a right-in, right-out off of DeQuinta, as well as a full access point along Square Lake. Engineering has reviewed the access points and has rated some engineering concerns. However, these can be addressed as part of the engineering review, and they really would not affect necessarily the site layout as proposed. We do note that engineering also has expressed a concern for the parcel that's located just north of the existing parcel. They note that due to the proximity of this curb cut as well as the intersection, that access that site will be difficult. So they are requesting that we do require a condition that there be put in a cross access easement to gain access to that northern property. Doing so will require the loss of approximately 2 to 3 parking spaces, but I'll get into parking in a second as to why that should not be a concern. As noted, the building is placed in the location as required by the neighborhood node. We do note that the building is set back approximately 14 feet from DeQuinder and 11 feet from Square Lake. The Planning Commission has the authority to grant a building placement of up to 30 feet from the right-of-way line. 10 feet is the required standard in this particular district. So they're asking for a deviation of 4 feet, 1 feet accordingly. As I noted, they will lose approximately 2 to 3 spaces due to the cross access. However, they are over parked by ordinance requirement. Based on the size of the building, they're required to provide 26 spaces. They're requesting approval for 37 spaces. We do note there's a revision in the zoning ordinance that notes that any parking in excess of 20% over the minimum requirement requires a special approval from the Planning Commission. They're asking for approximately 42% more parking than required by ordinance, so they do need special approval from the Planning Commission. It's the applicant's burden to prove the need for the additional parking, and they should provide evidence to the Planning Commission that the additional parking is needed on a daily basis. So this should be something the Planning Commission should have a discussion with the applicant on. Again, I want to note that they will lose approximately 2 to 3, so we take that number from 37 down to approximately 35 or 34 spaces. The applicant has provided a full landscape plan. You can note that the landscaping is located along the green belt, within the parking lot, as well as along the adjacent property line. We do note that they're deficient in a few items of the landscape plans. First off, they need to add 1 more additional parking lot tree. There's space to put an additional tree in. And second off, we do note that they need to increase the screening along the western property line, as this is a single-family home, and so there's screening requirements which they did not meet. Lastly, they are providing a trash enclosure at the northwest corner of the site. This trash enclosure is screened with the masonry material that does match the building. The applicant has provided a full lighting plan. They are proposing 6 single fixture lighting poles in the parking lot and 23 wall sconces that are located around the perimeter of the building. The photometrics exceed the ordinance requirement along both DeQuinder and Square Lake, though very minimal. They do exceed maximum, and so they will have to reduce those lighting levels as a condition of approval. The applicant has provided full elevations as well as a rendering. The building is primarily masonry with a different mix of stone, block and brick color. This elevation is actually looking at the corner. This is DeQuinder in this location, and this is Square Lake in this location. And this is looking at the back side or the parking lot side of the building in these two elevations. So our recommendation is the Planning Commission should consider the applicant's request to waive the building placement requirements as well as consider the parking waiver. If the Planning Commission does grant the waivers, we do recommend preliminary site plan approval with minor conditions of the cross-access easement, required parking lot trees, required trees along the green belt, and reducing of the photometric lines. Photometric readings along the southern and eastern property line. Thank you.
Just to add to Mr. Carlisle's presentation, I started here in 2002, and this property, we've processed 2 applications for the redevelopment of this property. The first was about a dozen years ago, maybe 14 years ago. There was a potential drugstore where they wanted a drugstore as well as a drive-through window on the west side of the building that would potentially impact the residential neighbors to the west. And there was significant opposition from the neighbors for that project. That project eventually died. And then many on the Planning Commission will remember there was a proposal for a potential Tim Hortons restaurant with a drive-through, with the drive-through being located in proximity to the residential neighbors to the west. And as you can imagine, there was significant opposition to that. I had many discussions offline, and we heard comments at the Planning Commission from residential neighbors indicating that they recognized that this site was commercial zoned, had been commercial zoned for a long time, and they weren't necessarily opposed to the development of the parcel. However, they were opposed to the potential impact of not only the busy coffee shop, but also the drive-through. And that project eventually died. So from a use perspective, as a residential neighbor, I certainly am not here to speak for any of the neighbors. They're in the audience here this evening. But from my experience, a medical office building is about as good as it gets for a neighbor. They've got limited hours. They don't get busy until a reasonable hour in the morning. They shut down at a reasonable hour in the late afternoon, early evening. They're generally very quiet if they're even open on weekends. So from a neighbor perspective, it's about as good as it gets as a commercial development. Nonetheless, this is not a public hearing, so we were not required to send notice to within 300 feet, but we do recognize that it is a commercial development. Although a site plan, we did send a mailed notice to abutting residential property owners. We sent them towards the end of last week. Again, not required, we did it as a courtesy. We didn't make a determination that this was going to be on the agenda until Tuesday, so we were a little bit late getting to that. But I'm just for the benefit of those in attendance, as a courtesy, we did mailings to the neighbors to give them a heads up, which was why I would imagine some of them are here this evening.
Nice. Any questions for staff or consultant? Go ahead.
A question for Mr. Carlisle. You mentioned that the cross-access is being recommended because engineering is actually indicating that the parcel to the north will be difficult to provide an access. Does that mean that they're actually prohibiting access to that site just individually, only through this site, or
No.
just that because they're so close, it'll be challenging to put two approaches next to each other?
The concern is twofold. Across to Quinder, there's already, it may be difficult to line up with future development. But in addition, at least if we get the cross-access point in here, it gives the flexibility to both the city as well as future applicants to develop this parcel so that the city wouldn't necessarily have to grant an access onto Quinder. But again, it allows for a lot more flexibility in the future. So that's why the engineering department is requiring, or asking that we require a condition of the cross-access.
Go ahead, John.
Is the approach drive shown on the plans on the Quinder, is that the same existing drive that we see?
They're very close. They look like they're in the approximate same location, but again, these would be fully vetted through the engineering process. But yeah, they're basically in the same place that they're shown there.
Another question, as far as the lighting levels, don't they have to be zero at the property line so they're not spilling over on the adjacent properties?
They have to be, I believe it's .05?
Point one.
0.1 at the property line.
Okay.
Yes.
Well, there are some that are greater than .1 along the north property line. So we might want to add that to the.
Okay. Okay.
If this moves forward, we will ensure that the photometric plan is changed to comply.
The setbacks for the building, are they related to the neighborhood node zoning then?
Correct. The neighborhood node requires that buildings be placed at, if it's a corner, at the corner, and be placed at 10 feet from the property line, the property lines. However, the planning commission has the authority to move that from 10 feet up to a maximum of 30 feet, provided the applicant provide either increased landscaping or pedestrian improvements within that location. What the planning commission, what we can't allow is we don't allow parking within that area of the setback. So again, the relief is 1 foot on Square Lake and 4 feet on Quinder to meet the neighborhood requirements.
Thank you.
Any others? Not yet. Any others? Go ahead.
Mr. Krant, I just want to clarify the file number associated with the plan says SU, which indicates special use, and it probably should be SP.
Okay, make that correction, thank you. Any other comments before we go on? Then I'd like the applicant to step forward and show us your project. Please use the microphone at that end. It's that we use to record the sound. There's a microphone right in that, right, speak into that one, would be perfect, or close to it.
Good evening.
You won't hear the sound over the speakers here. It's just going to be recorded.
It amplifies for the recording.
Okay, good evening. My name is Ghassan Abdinoor from JV Associates Architect. I'm representing the owner that is with us here, Mr. Tom Caspo. And we're proposing this building on DeQuinder and Square Lake. We're proposing a 5,000 square feet Beaumont urgent care. It's one tenant. They're going to take the whole building. So it's an urgent care, and we're trying to work. First, we thank the planning department and the planning consultant that we've been going through this project for a while now. We had a lot of little different issues to solve because of its urgent care, and we have our requirement to have the clear glass in these buildings, that we can't have screening in for the windows. So, and because of its urgent care, we had to go back through maybe 2 different designs. And Beaumont, there's also safety for their exam rooms. So we end up finalizing the building, that this is the final one. What you saw, the first one, what the consultant was doing was a different building. But with the change of what we did over here, especially now let's start from Square Lake. For Square Lake, we do meet the requirement. We do have 50% of glazing. But the way we come up with a floor plan for the urgent care. That was the original design. And these windows, Beaumont were hoping that they can put screening on their windows. But after talking to Brent and looking at the code, they said that it's not applicable. So we went back and we did change the design. And we moved the windows, especially at the center. We moved them to one office and the other one for the lunchroom. And we created the wall in between. We took the windows. In this elevation on DeQuinder and Square Lake, we still meet the 50% requirement. I think we have like 57% glazing, so we don't have issues on that. The one on DeQuinder, we still meet it because we did put the lobby area is actually facing the front, so we didn't have any issues by having glazing in that area. And we do have maybe 57% in this area too. Especially, talking to Brand, we wanted to put the entrance closer to DeQuinder, where the entrance is. So it's closer to the lobby area, and we made that element works very well. The one on facing the west side, the elevation facing the west side here, we did have 2 windows, but actually we do have an X-ray room in this area. And we end up taking the glass, but we still meet the 30%. I think we have like 38, 37% glazing.
I want to clarify something. So these windows are proposed to be covered up, correct?
No, but this is new design. This is the old design.
This is the old design.
This is the old design, yes.
Right. This
is the new design. The new design, because most of the exam rooms are in that parking side, and Beaumont said there's no way to have the exam rooms having windows and not to be able to cover it. So we end up we talked to the consultant, we talked to Brent, we went through the process, and they do have a part of the code that they will let us create some kind of nice element to the building, to the elevation, that kind of take the windows out and create some excitements in the elevation. We do have to provide 50% of the windows of the 30%. That's including in the front where the entrance is. We do have 30% of glazing closer to the window. But the other 50% we have to use we have to meet the requirement of 4 different elements. The first one, for example, I think they were calling it expression of structural system and infill. And what they meant with that, they have to be at least 3 inches away from the wall. We created in this one 8-inch. We created these columns, and we created some element with it, with the canopy, that creates some more excitement into that wall. The other part we did, item B, the system of horizontal and vertical scales. In this situation, we have the bottom is we have the block system, and we have one.
Oh, you dropped it? Just speak up.
No, it's disconnected.
The
It's no longer connected.
Okay.
We want somebody to screw that in again?
That's no problem. So really what happened, we created these horizontal elements that we have the block. We have 1, 2, 3, 4 lines of limestone going through the building just to break the elevation a little bit. Plus we do have the metal paneling on the top that actually create different elements. That's not like one brick or anything. So just create some little difference in the part of the design. And also the variance in material. We do have variance in material. We do have block, we have limestone, we have 2 types of brick, and we do have metal paneling on the top. And we do have the canopies. They're different type of paneling. They're like actually dark bronze for the canopies in the front, and we do have the silver paneling on the top. That's combination. Plus, the kind of above the windows, we do have some kind of covers. They're actually silver paneling. So by doing this, we do meet the requirement of that part, that we meet like the percentage, and so actually we eliminated most of the windows for the exam room. Now I think Beaumont, urgent care, they're more comfortable because their exam rooms are more safe, and they don't want to show it to clients. And we meet also the city requirement that we don't have to put any screening for the windows from the inside. Like you see, the materials, I have a little sample. I'll let everybody see it. We do have a block. We do have limestone. We do have 2 colors of brick. We have the silver paneling on the top. We have the bronze, dark bronze canopies in the towers. And so actually, it's kind of an exciting building, even though it's urgent care, but we like to kind of come up with something nice after talking to Brent in that corner, connecting DeQuinder and Square Lake. And hopefully in the future, I think hopefully the owner will be looking to add another maybe building next to it, some kind of medical next to it, just to kind of, and we do connect the parking from inside, and we do connect it if we get from the street, because circulation is a big issue. And you know the hours for this type of building. It's urgent care. So it's going to open a little bit in the maybe Saturdays, the weekend, maybe for a specific time. And during the week is a regular time. And we do have the lighting on the building to create that safety issue for the buildings, that it's light around the whole building and for the parking. We did submit some drawings to Brent that actually we did revise the photometric. It's already kind of fixed. It's part of that set of drawings. And we did, if we can get more parking, would be great. But we do have a design here, like you see on the top. We took like 6 parking out. We went to 31 parking instead of 37. We would love to go back to 37, but we do have an option to go back to 31. Because it's 26 parking is required, and we don't mind that we meet this requirement, because eventually we're going to open it to the building on this future. We don't have a tenant for it now, and we might go back and add these parking to work with the whole project as a whole. And for the landscaping, I do have the revised with me. You don't have the drawings. We did put a lot of landscaping. I'll give it to Brent. I'll send it to you. And just to make sure that we meet all the requirements, we did put all what the consultant was requesting. And also, I didn't forget about this elevation. We did create planters on this elevation, and with kind of landscaping on the walls, just to add a little bit more element to the building, one facing the parking lot, just to put the whole building kind of together and just give it some nice, safe element. The circulation works from both sides, from Square Lake and from DeQuinder. I think we're going to work with the engineering department. I did ask the civil guy to meet with them. They met and they tried to solve all the issues. And we did create these 2 towers, one kind of going, if you're coming from Square Lake, You see that tower, it gives you a little bit in the corners, and we did create the main one between Square Lake and DeQuinder, and just it's nice element. Plus, it's a busy area. It's nice to create that ambiance for that building, and it seems like it worked okay with everybody's help here in the city. And I was just waiting for any questions.
So what we're hearing is the original application that's in front of you this evening, they need approval from the Planning Commission to exceed 20%. Now, this wasn't part of there's not a full-blown site plan for this, but they're indicating that they can drop the number of parking spaces so they don't need approval from the Planning Commission. So it's really up to the Planning Commission which way they want to proceed, but I think it would be helpful if the applicant could explain the rationale for seeking more parking spaces, if that's the direction they want to go in.
Absolutely.
For the extra parking lot, is we thought that this is urgent care. We like to make sure that we have enough parking. You're not going to have people coming parking. It's mainly for employees. You're going to have maybe 5, 6, 7 nurses, and we have people coming to the urgent care. Sometime, I hope nobody comes to the urgent care, but usually sometime it happens that we do have the doctors and the patient coming, and we wanted them to be comfortable. We knew that if we connect to the other building, we're going to lose 3 to 4 parking, but that's why we had some extra parking. I mean, if you approve us with the full parking, we find it actually works better for us, and even works for engineering too, so we don't have to create the wheel later for detention and underground. So we put everything right now. I think the connection will be from, if you see the entrance from Square Lake, that connection will go to the other building, because if we do a future project, what we talked with Brent, we like to put the building actually also facing the street. So we want to try to stay away from the residents. So actually that street goes away. Even if I put parking there, it's going to be part of that street going to the building. And we line up the proposed building with the one that we're proposing right now. And actually create a nice concept, and it put the whole project actually looks better from the street too, especially next to each other, instead of in and out. And also we stay away from the neighbors, even though we did add a lot of extra landscaping. So we keep the building away because lighting and stuff like that and sound, so it's better to be on the street side. And that kind of was the option. If we keep the parking, would work for us, vice versa, it's okay. I mean, we would love to have the parking, but, and that's why, and we're trying to make the circulation works in an easy way, so, and we did change the photometric, it goes up to 0, whatever point requirement. I mean, we're not gonna get the permit unless we meet the requirement, so really. So we're willing, we're gonna work with the city. We did a lot of projects with the city and would love to kind of do more projects with you guys. And it's exciting that Beaumont Urgent Care is excited. I mean, they're not too far, they have the hospital. They said, we'd like to be in this area. And first they said, oh, maybe we should talk to them, try to put screen on the windows. I told them, this is the rules, let's go by the rules. So they were okay for us to go through the whole process and try to make that building without no variances meet the requirements and codes. And any questions?
Any questions for the applicant from the, go ahead.
Just want to clarify, the one drawing up there, is that the one with 31 parking spots, or is that 37, the one that's shown?
This is with 31.
31, okay. So the cross-access easement would be through that green belt there?
That's right, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, that's the best way to do it,
Okay.
connected to the other building.
All right.
And actually, you can have up to 9,000 square feet building on the other side.
Okay, thank you.
So just to clarify, you mentioned the parcel to the north. The owner of the corner also owns a parcel to the north for
Yes.
expansion?
It's
So
the
in the
same owner,
future,
yes.
whatever you're planning to
But
expand?
we don't have any tenant for it, and we
Correct.
don't want to just build building and keep it there, unless maybe a group of doctors, they decided to come there, we're not
Okay,
gonna.
so the concept is you want cross-access directly in the back of the building to
In the
push
back
the
of the
building as close to...
line up with the one from the
Right.
Square Lake.
Okay, so whatever you would be proposing there, you want to push it?
If we come back in front of you, that's what maybe will be the best way to do. And that's discussing with Ben too, so that was maybe the best idea for that property. and keep the buildings more closer to the road.
Go ahead.
So just to clarify, in terms of timing, so we prepare a report, we, towards the end of the week, we informed the applicant of the smaller, these are small issues that we can take care of the issues. They were very quick in addressing the issues and giving us revised plans. But the report's written, it's ready to go to the planning commission. What we don't want to do is say in our report, well, we're missing a tree, and then we give you a plan that has all the trees. Or our report says photometric doesn't comply, and then we attach a photometric that does comply, et cetera, et cetera. So they were very responsive, getting us revised plans, but what we found is by providing those revised plans, it confuses everything. So we held back on the revised plans, gave you the plans that we had reviewed, because we didn't even really have time to review those revised plans. So Ghassan is correct, he has given us revised plans. We did not share it with those plans with the planning commission, because it was at the 11th hour, and all that does is cloud things, if that makes sense.
It makes sense, I
And
understand.
the reason why we gave it, we want to make sure that Brent is comfortable. I mean, that we are going to revise it, we want to show it to him.
And what they do is they prove to, at least administratively, and to themselves, that they can meet what we asked them to do, so.
Good. Go ahead, Mr. Appianedo.
Your site plan shows the dumpster in that northwest corner. What is that? That was, Mr. Sullivan, that was that layout was actually good. I was trying to.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry.
I want to reference that.
There you go.
Right there. What is that large rectangle there painted on the parking lot area there? The orange, the
I
X?
think it should be taken out, that's maybe the loading area, but it's not a loading area really, it's not, so. Because really what we talked with the planning department, this building does not need a loading area. They only maximum, the biggest, it's a van. So we try to keep the loading area away. Why put a loading area in the site that we never have a truck coming to? So actually this one is just mainly for a van location. That we put it as the size of the car, but it's just, we call it loading area for a van.
Okay.
Just to make everybody comfortable in it, and so it's mainly, this one is more graphic, so it should be smaller.
I just wanted it for clarification
It
because the
should be
way,
the same size of a car.
right, the way it's shown now, it protrudes into the drive aisle.
Yeah,
and
yeah, I
it-
think it's just a,
Any other questions for the applicant? Go ahead.
Are there certain parking spots that are handicapped?
yes, it's all the requirement. Close to the entrance door, we have maybe 3 or 4.
Mr.
We
Tagle.
put more handicap in it, more than, usually you need 1 for 25 or something, but here you have at least to need like 3 cars for handicap.
Go ahead, John.
Can you tell us the 14 and a, or 4.5 feet that you pushed the building back and 1.5 that you pushed it off of the Square Lake side? Tell us a little bit about why that was important as opposed to holding it at the 10 feet.
Actually, we do have, with the tower area, we do have like, part of it is coming out. So we wanted, instead of going with a straight line, we wanted to show that tower coming out. So if you see the elevation, there's at least maybe 1 foot difference between one wall and the other wall. So the tower is closer to the corner than the actual building. And we wanted to put more landscaping just to make it look prettier. And we did have the space for it. But if it
So
needs
the
to
1
be-
foot protrusion of the tower is both on the DeQuinder and the Square Lake side?
That's right, yes. Because we have the tower also
Right.
on the
right.
Square Lake rooms.
And so you've got 11.5 feet on the Square Lake and 14.5 on the DeQuinder. I mean, are you doing more landscaping than what that rendering shows?
Yes, we have the new, I just got the new, I'll send it to Brent. So we gave it to a landscape architect, he just finished it today, and we're done with it. I can put it on the table, you can see it, I have the drawings with me.
Any other questions for the applicant? I had a quick question regarding hours of service and also the parking. The hours of service, what are the hours for this facility?
The hours of service, I know they start around 8 o'clock. Maybe they open till, good question, really. I know they open, they have some hours in the weekends, Saturday and Sunday for like a half a day or something. But they do open at least from 9 to 7. But we should check on, go to urgent care, Beaumont, and they'll tell us really.
The other question I have is regarding, I realize it's urgent care, so it'd just be people, walk-in patients coming in. Hopefully they can walk. Point is, are there going to be any scheduled appointments with doctors? Does it also take scheduled doctor appointments besides just
Like
walk-ins?
they do some schedule, but you always have somebody coming as urgent. I mean, that no appointment, they just come in, so.
So it's both scheduled appointments and urgent care?
That's right, yes, they have 2, 3 doctors maybe in it.
And that gets to my parking question, because some doctors that I see are very prompt. I get there and the doctor's ready for me. Other places, it could be a half hour to an hour and a half before they see me, and backup of maybe another 5 or 6 patients come in. So I would say, I would lean toward having the parking spaces that you've shown, 37, well, minus the
Going back,
the
yeah.
access.
That was the original kind of.
Yeah, so we're looking at maybe 34 parking places if you take out 3.
That's right, yeah.
Okay, and that would be fine with me, because I know if you do have scheduled appointments, sometimes, you know, the doctors see patients longer than their scheduled appointment, and then that backs up more need for more parking, that's all I'm saying.
And maybe if you think, Brent, maybe we should show the access line going straight and show the parking. Maybe that's not a bad idea. Like, try to design the building that it's kind of going straight, show the access going to the other side for the future, and create the island next to it and create these extra 3-4 parking, so.
So if this moves forward, it would move forward with a requirement that there be cross-access, and it would be required to be shown here.
We can show it and cut it.
Yeah, what it basically looks like for the planning commission is that they show a line, and they show like 10 feet on each side of the line.
That's to make it easy for everybody, and we know that this is how it's gonna work.
Is that 24 feet, 24 foot?
We're gonna match it, yeah, with the road, the 24 feet.
Any objection to approving this without a drawing that shows where that cross-access is going to be located?
It's gonna be like, yes, line up with that.
I'd like to give you a couple thoughts too. I've been silent on this parking. I'm a great believer in trying to preserve as much green space as you can instead of installing hard surface. Secondly, I am violently opposed to planning for a future building which may not be built as part of our site plan approval here. So I think in essence, let's stick with the 31 parking spots.
Okay, that's your opinion.
We just took a look for hours of operation. The Beaumont Hospital urgent care on Big Beaver is from 8 to 9, 7 days a week. So
7 days a week. Okay. So with that kind of hours of operation, hopefully the screening, et cetera, will not affect the neighbors. That's my concern too, is the hours of operation and affecting the neighbors. And it is a quiet space. It doesn't have the drive-through. I'm glad to hear
It's
that.
quiet, but I mean, that's why we're gonna meet all the requirements for the landscape. Tony, can you open that big sheet? Just open it at the center of the table. You just got that landscape plan,
It's upside down.
so. No, just you can put it on the
We can put it
table.
right here.
if you want.
Yeah.
So, and we can put more trees, but we did provide a lot of. So,
Maybe I'll pass it around.
One question.
Sure, go ahead.
On this elevation, the parking lot side elevation, is there any like a front view so I can see the?
it's
This
on
is
the.
the view with the new
not
design.
covered.
This is the view. Look at the hard corners. This would be the front of the building.
Now my question is there any door there? Is that the or is there any entrance?
There's no entrance on direct entrance on Square Lake. The entrance is
So
on.
this is just a plain wall, nothing on this side of the building, right?
That's correct.
So
then it meets city requirements?
Yeah, because the main entrance is in this corner. We've addressed this issue of previous buildings in form-based districts, and if the front entrance is easy accessible and can be clearly seen from the front, from the street, we count that towards meeting the ordinance requirement. We find this does meet the ordinance requirement of an entrance.
If there's raining and something happening, big, they're all the way from the front, right? Walking around the building and.
What do you mean by that?
Not X.
You're walking from the, from
Parking is-
From
the
parking to the
parking.
front door, they don't have to walk around the building. They just-
So there's also an entrance here. I believe that's probably an employee
Okay.
entrance, but the main entrance is this corner. Since it is a medical office, they do want to limit the access into the building, and so really one point of entrance is really the only thing that really works for them from a patient standpoint. The primary parking is located in this area. I assume employees will probably park in this area. So this is where the primary parking is going to
So
be.
the main entrance, if you can show me, sorry,
Right here.
right here, okay.
This is the lobby.
Okay.
So the lobby actually is I can't tell, right here. The lobby is this main whole front visible portion of the
If you
building.
go to the floor plan,
That's why I was trying to see the elevation, because, the design has changed since
The elevation of the plan.
front view from,
Okay.
the whatever the size.
So just to be clear, this is the DeQuinder side,
Yes.
which lines up with this side.
Right.
This is the Square Lake side, which is this side. This is the front building entrance, which would be on the back side, right, basically right there. This is the front lobby, so all of this will look into a lobby waiting room area.
So, okay. So there is no entrance on this side, right?
It's
No.
down at the far left corner.
Far left corner, okay.
And the lower elevation,
All the way to
lower
the-
drawing, right, yep, that's it.
Yeah, that's.
So this is DeQuinder here. It's right there.
so we do have the side door in the back, maybe for the employees, so they park in the back, and we made it for the patient that mainly close to the entrance.
Any other questions for either applicant? Go ahead.
Just one quick one, based upon Mr. Tattapelli's comments about the hours of operation. The one that's in Troy, the hours that he stipulated, is that based upon a city ordinance that requires them to be open in certain hours, or is that something that we can stipulate as part of our approval tonight?
No, I mean, it's hours of operation are open to the retailer or the operator themselves. There's
It's
no,
a urgent care, so.
there's no stipulation on the hours of operation. If this was a special use or something that requires special approval from the planning commission, I think that's some point of discussion. But since this is a permitted use in this district, they're allowed to have hours of operation to serve their needs. If it becomes a nuisance issue or a problem, then obviously we have rules and regulations and authority to correct those issues. But just basically a caveat to cap the hours, we don't have the authority to do that.
If I may ask, I understood there was a correction that this is a special use.
It's not a
No,
special
it's not.
use, it's by right.
That was, it was,
It's wrong.
It's a typographical error.
It's
Oh,
wrong.
I see, okay.
any other questions or thoughts from the commission?
I just want to clarify that the applicant handed out a landscape plan. There's a landscape plan in your packet that complied, other than the fact it was missing one tree. So,
Missing one tree and also missing the required landscaping along the western property line.
So does our resolution reflect the original layout or stuff we haven't seen yet?
We can keep the existing as long as we meet the requirements.
I think the condition should be that they have to meet all landscape requirements, including screening along the western property line and the additional tree in the parking lot. We just saw that. I haven't looked at it yet. I don't know if
Other
it meets.
elements that are in the resolution, the proposed resolution.
the proposed resolution includes language that says that they are to provide required trees along the western property line.
Good. Well, if there are no other comments or thoughts, could we have someone make a motion to resolution?
Can I make a suggestion before you do that?
Yeah, go ahead.
There are 3 or 4 items that our planning consultant recommended be done in this resolution. I don't have any problems with any of them except the parking waiver. And I think that I'd like to at least get a sense of the commission on that one, so that we haven't got them all four logged into one resolution. And
Yep, got it.
it makes it difficult to,
Oh, yeah, that's true. Yeah, before our resolution, we do have, even though this is not a, public hearing, we do allow for public comment. So if there's anyone in the audience that would like to talk about this item, please step forward at the microphone. And give your name and address, please.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak. Appreciate it. I'm on the northern property, so if you go back to the original map, so address is 2964. My name is Alok Rathod. I'm the owner of that house. So the second house on the Briarwood from the streets, right there.
Okay,
That's me. So I just wanted to raise few of thoughts. I was under the impression that the original property which is being proposed is all the way up to my property line. So that's not the case, but I would like to get a little bit more clarification about the future, because it's kind of now dependent on what we are going to do now, and that will evolve how the northern property will be developed. So anything concrete you guys can say about it, I'll appreciate that. You haven't developed, first my thoughts on the property. I really appreciate an urgent care. Not that I need, not that we foresee a need, but going back to what Brent said, having anything else to the property, having an urgent care is not a bad thing a city could use. So I really appreciate you bringing that to the table. Few concerns, if you guys could consider from my side. On the northern side, you haven't proposed anything on the tree line. Maybe you guys are assuming that another building is going to come, and then you will take care of the northern. I would request city to consider right now how the northern boundary would also be developed. So because right now, after many requests to the city, they finally mandated the house, which is right now seen on the property, it's not there. It had to be demolished, and raccoons and all kinds of nocturnal animals were living there, and my house was dealing with that all the time. So if you can fix the problem for future now, I greatly appreciate it. The second thing, I like to spend a lot of time in the backyard in the evening. We have the telescope. My kids enjoy the night sky. In the Troy, when I moved in back in 2007, 8, we used to see Milky Way. Now we don't see Milky Way in our backyard. I think one property will not make any difference to that. But at least if we can consider, now that I know the timing of the hours as well, it's, at least on the summertime, it's going to be lit till 10, 11, because once the urgent care closed, the employee has to close things and then go, so it's another half an hour, 45 minutes. If you can do something about lights, that they don't fall, and the LED lights coming on the northern side will come directly in my backyard. So, when you sit in the backyard, you have a fireplace going with the family, you're having a good time, you don't want to see a light right in your backyard. Right now, if you go and see, it's pitch dark from my backyard. The only thing I see is the Manny's, which is a liquor store across the square leg. So if you could do something in your design, maybe use less LEDs on the northern side, something you can consider, I greatly appreciate it. I don't know if you have any fence proposed on the perimeter on the west and the north side. I would like to consider that as well. It may look bad, I can understand that, but once you have a parking lot, you have no control of who parks there. And we have kids. That Briarwood, in the morning, there are 14, 15 kids who gets to the elementary school. There are about 7, 8 kids for middle school, and there are 7, 8 kids for the high school. So that street has many, many kids. The first neighbor I have, they have 2, 3 kids. I have 2 kids. My neighbor has 2 kids. The neighbor next to them have kids. The neighbor north, everybody. You go around the circle, everybody has young kids in elementary school. So if you could consider the safety, and then define a perimeter, a decent wall. I hate to say that, but if I have to pitch in to get a decent wall, let me know what my contribution is. But just help us do something nicer looking. So it solves your problem, solves my problem, and we have a win-win situation there as well. Right? Dumpster location, I think right now it may not be a concern. But as you move another building, and a bigger building, 9,000 square foot or so, dumpster will become a challenge, but maybe it's a future topic, but right now I don't have that as a issue for now. Okay, so those are some of those things I wanted to.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else from the audience would like to talk?
Good evening and thank you for this opportunity. My house is first house 297 at Briar Road. My name is Mohammed Akram and I'm his first neighbor. So I like to thank you especially that you raised the question about the timings. When we received the letter, it says the medical buildings, does not say urgent care. I'm a medical person, physical therapist, so I know the urgent care. And I don't know the timings. The city will bound any timings like 7 o'clock, 6 o'clock, or in future it may be 24 hours urgent care. So that's my concern if it is 24 hours urgent care. And the Tim Hortons last time, because of the heavy traffic only, I was against the Tim Hortons. And this urgent care or the medical building may be the same amount of traffic. And if not same, because of the timings maybe. And I don't know how do you consider that, the traffic, heavy traffic, and how far it will be from Briarwood entrance and this entrance of this new building, how far it will be from the Dequinder. Because we have Briarwood entrance where the school bus stops and the next entrance which will be for this building. And like Alok said that if there's any consideration of fence or wall or something which will really protect us, especially the summer timings. I mean, when there's no leaves on the trees, and it's very clear from my property to the main Dequinder area. So if they consider any wall or anything, any concrete things which can save us or protect us from this, these parking or traffic when they come to visit urgent care. That's it. Thank you so much.
Okay.
Can I say one more thing? I really apologize, but it is very quick.
I'll make it quick. Microphone, please.
Just as a consideration, so if it is a longer hour, there is a rush hour, flu season, October time, November time, if 31 parking spots are full, what do you expect the parking would be? Because now you have 2 Main Street. I don't want people to start coming to Briarwood because that's the northern street and you can walk that side to the urgent care. So just make a consideration of that as well when you're defining the parking spaces. And overflow, there is no overflow. There's absolutely no way you can park anywhere on the street, on Dequinder as well as Square Lake. So it's going to be a concern.
Do you have any thought about the transition between the neighbors and the requirement for a wall versus landscape?
So I'm not on the planning commission. I don't vote,
Right.
but I'm a professional planner with years of experience. I certainly appreciate the concern of the neighbors with regards to this lot, but this lot is not under consideration this evening.
Right.
This lot is controlled by this gentleman that's sitting behind you, Mr. Chairman. He's listening, and if this moves forward with another medical office building at that time, it's going to be required to come before the planning commission, meet all requirements, and at that time, the planning commission will have the ability to work with the applicant to propose a fence or a wall or landscape or a combination of those things. But to require a wall here now, when this lot is not under consideration this evening, I'm not going to recommend that. It's off-site. We can't require that. But we're listening, and the applicant's listening. Those points that were made regarding the wall or the fence are good. It's a great point. I get it. 31 spaces for how, 6, is it 6 exam rooms?
Yes.
6 exam rooms, 31 spaces. It exceeds the parking by over 20%. I highly doubt that they're ever going to be in a situation where they're not going to be able to park here, but I don't see anyone parking on Briarwood and walking this distance to go to an urgent care. I just don't see it. I'm not an expert, but I don't see it. What I think would probably happen would, well, I don't know what's going to happen because 31 spaces for 6 exam rooms, that's plenty of parking. So I get the concern, but I don't think it's going to happen. I've never heard of that in my 17 years here, that there being that issue, but who knows? The parking lot lighting is a very, another valid point. I think all the points that were made by the residents were valid. I think having the applicant place the parking lot lights on dimmers or timers between the hours of 11 and 7 is within your purview. That could and should be a condition of approval this evening.
Can I mention just a couple more points? With regards to the development of this parcel, you know, it's currently under the same ownership. We don't know if it's going to be developed with the same owner. I mean, it could be sold and developed with something else. However, that being said, the principles of the zoning that are the same here also apply to this district as well. So the building will be up in front of Dequindre, as far away from these residents as possible. Parking will be in the back. In addition, regardless of what the future use of this site will be, there are the same landscape requirements that are along this property line are also required along these two property lines. And so those would apply. The Planning Commission in that instance has the authority to not only consider a landscape screen, but you could also require a wall if that's the direction the Planning Commission with working with the neighbors want to go. But again, that would be contingent upon when and if this site does get developed. Like I said, the owner is here in the room. If the owner does want to come in and develop this parcel, I suggest that they reach out to the two neighbors that spoke tonight to see how they can maybe mitigate some of their concerns before they come into the city with their plans to address some of the concerns that are heard. So a lot of the issues that were raised are very, very valid, but they're ones that we can't deal with until this parcel gets developed, because we just don't have the ordinance in place now to do that at this point.
What I can assure the neighbors is we weren't required, as I indicated, but we provided mail notice for this. We'll do the same for the property to the north. So when we get an application, we'll let you know. And we all want the same thing. We want development here on the corner. Though it's been zoned commercial for decades. But we want something it's a balance of property rights. The owner of the property has rights, but so do the neighbors. We want to find that balance. That's why we're here this evening. That's why we invited you. And that's why your comments were important. We're listening and we move forward.
Just make sure you give us a little bit more heads up. September 5th mailing, it comes to us yesterday. We already missed the point of writing emails, phone calls, so we have to rush kids to come here. Just give us a little bit more heads up when you develop next time. So at least if I'm in town, I can plan for it better. If not, then I can plan for it otherwise.
As I indicated, Mr. Chairman, no good deed goes unpunished. We didn't make a determination until Tuesday. We tried our best, but your point, I get it. Yeah, I get it. You're correct.
Okay. I think there's a couple issues hanging there. Parking, number of parking spots that Mr.
Yeah, maybe if we could just take a hands vote on the issue of leaving it at 31 or approving in excess up to 37.
Because there's going to be...
The resolution suggests 37.
Right, okay.
I'm saying I'm opposed to that.
Yeah, I would go as high as 34, only because, I know, because that knocks the 3 out of the existing plan of 37, but whatever the consensus is, 31, any other comments for numbers?
Well, we heard from the architect that they prefer to actually put more parking spots because of future grading, drainage issues that they don't want to deal with, and they want to deal with them now.
Okay.
So,
All right.
you know, it sounds like...
What number do you...
at 34,
34,
whatever, 37
yeah.
minus the 3. For
Right,
the,
34, okay. Mr. Tagle?
I like the smaller number.
31?
34.
34?
31.
Okay. You're
31.
31, okay. 1, 2, 3 31s. 1, 2, no, 4 31s, correct?
Yeah.
31's the number.
31's the
Sorry.
number.
I hate to, you know, I agree with Mr. Abahidian on that, but
I'm gonna can I add one thing? So we talked about the cross-access being located here. What we will likely require is the time to get the cross-access connection on this side is when it's constructed. So what will happen is they'll provide cross-access and they'll actually construct that cross-access to the property line.
Okay.
In the short term. So in the short term, there'll probably be at least 2 extra parking spaces until that gets extended. So there'll be essentially 33 parking spaces until the cross-access is continued to the north.
Okay.
Yeah, we need 3 parking.
So, Any comments on the dimming of the lights after?
Between 11 and 7?
Yeah, between 11 and 7. Any thoughts on that one before we move forward with the resolution?
So I have a question.
Go ahead.
In my mind, it's not clear yet. Does the owner have to dim the lights to .1 on the property line even though they own the property to the north?
Yes.
So that's it,
Yes.
regardless of who owns the property, that's just a requirement? Okay.
It is a separate piece of property.
It's a piece of property. If they combined it,
Could
then
be
they,
sold. Right.
combined it would not be an issue, but since it
Right.
is a parcel line, that it does, it's
So it's more of a legal description issue of two different parcels that it could be sold off, it could be the different owner.
Yep.
Sometime
It's
in
just
the future.
it's North's requirement that says at the property line, regardless of who owns what property, it has to be .1.
So any thoughts on restricting the lighting at between 11 at night to 7 in the morning? Any thoughts? Do we want to put that restriction in the resolution? I get some head nods, yes, 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 okay, that can go in the resolution. Mr. Tagle?
What does that mean?
That means it meets all the requirements during the day and then goes less.
Okay, tell me, when you
Why?
say to dim it, what do you mean dim? I know what dimming means.
Yeah, I know what you're
But
saying.
what
Yeah, what-
light
to what
levels?
level?
You know, I mean, again, I don't have a problem with it, but again, what we're expecting and what we're asking and what they're
Yep,
expecting.
could be 10%, could be 50%, I know
So
what
I,
you're
you
saying.
know, again, it's a slippery slope. I mean,
It is.
I think if we're gonna ask them to dim it, you know, maybe, you know, I don't know. I guess I haven't studied the photometrics enough to know if they exceed the standards, the IES standards for parking lot lighting, and if they could be dimmed down to that, or if they're at that level now. You know, there's always a safety issue.
Yeah, I understand that, yeah.
I don't think we want to mandate that they dim them below some level that's more of a safety issue.
I agree. No, I agree with that. The other thought is, as far as dimming, here's what happens. Even though on the ground, it's 0.1 foot candle, is that what the unit of measurement is? 0.1 foot candle? Okay, but I know parking lot lights that are distant to me, I still see them because the glare from the fixture head itself, I see that as a bright little star object. That would be nice to dim those, but let's just put it this way, it does meet all the requirements as it is, correct or not?
Yeah, maybe this may be a little easier. There is a requirement in the ordinance that states that all outdoor fixtures shall be either turned off and/or reduced in light intensity between 11 p.m. and sunrise.
Okay.
The only exceptions are for security purposes and where there are sales and assembly and repair that takes up outside.
Mr. Colonel, in line with Mr. Tangle's thoughts, dimming.
So how we handle that is-
Sorry for,
how-
yeah, what's the measurement?
It's a public nuisance issue.
I beg your
It's a
pardon?
public nuisance issue at that point. If we get a call that the lights are too bright and the police go out there and take a measurement of it, because they're between 11 and sunrise, we're not working. It's a police issue at that point.
Okay, so what's the policeman gonna do? He's gonna light meter out there, and how is he gonna
Uh,
judge if it's too bright or not?
Yes, we have done that before.
Well, what's the standard they use?
The standard is that it should be not exceed .1 at the property line and it should be dimmed in the evening if it's causing a public nuisance.
Oh, I know.
So it's North's requirement. So I'm saying, I don't think the planning commission needs to debate this. It's simply, it's North's requirement. If it becomes a nuisance issue, the police can go out and enforce upon it.
You're talking like a lawyer now. It's a lot of double talk.
Oh, do you say, you telling me that you use double talk? Okay. Go ahead. I think we're ready for a resolution. Any other comments?
Well, just a solution is to be required to turn the lights off and put them on timers or motion controls, so that,
Yeah. Yeah.
they're off unless for security reasons that someone needs to enter the site, and then, I mean, that's covered in the ordinance.
Okay, so we don't need to include that in our resolution as far as dimming. Okay,
All right.
good. Now, are we ready for a resolution? Anyone brave enough to?
Yeah, okay, I'll take a
All
whack
right,
at it.
Mr. Hunt.
Resolved, the planning commission hereby approves the placement of the proposed building 14 feet from Flinders Road and 11 feet from Square Lake Road when a 10-foot build-to line is required without planning commission approval.
You want to just read the resolution?
Well, yeah, I'm going to. I'm just thinking, it's sort of double talk again now. We're talking about requiring the approval, and we're saying when a 10-foot line without planning commission approval. So why don't we just do it this way?
Okay, do it your way.
Planning commission hereby approves the placement of the proposed building 14 feet from DeQuinta Road and 11 feet from Score Lake Road when a 10-foot build-to line is required, period. Because we've just approved it in the first sentence. Okay. Be it further resolved, the planning commission does not approve the construction of 37 off-street parking spaces on a site when a maximum of 31 spaces are permitted without planning when 31 spaces are permitted, period. Deleting without planning commission approval. Be it finally resolved, the preliminary site plan approval pursuant to Article 8 of the zoning ordinance as requested for the proposed Grace Corner Medical Office located in the northwest corner of Square Lake and DeQuinta, Section 1, within the NN Neighborhood Node N District be granted, subject to the applicant following: 1, provide cross-access easement to serve the northern property. 2, provide required parking lot trees. 3, provide required trees on the western property line. 4, reduce light measurement along the southern and eastern property lines.
Any thoughts on that?
Mr. Taylor has.
Two things. Would you mind adding the western property line, or excuse me, it was the northern property line that has an excess of foot candles, lighting levels?
Oh, all right.
So
Reduce the light measurement along the northern, southern, and eastern property lines.
Correct.
Yeah.
I just want to make sure I understand this parking thing. I thought we were saying we would approve the 31 plus the 3 that were going to be required at the cross-access. Was that my misunderstanding?
Now, that was the 34 he was talking about.
Yeah, but
But we approved the 31.
But what you read was it approved at 36, construction of 37.
He said did not approve
No, I said-
37.
Oh, I'm
I
sorry.
put a negative in there.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah,
Okay.
we're at 31.
Thank you.
In the resolution.
Good catch, Jeff.
That's okay. Do we have a second for that resolution? Mr. Brown was fast. That's funny. Okay. All right, vote please. Yeah, we're ready.
Ms. Fowler?
Yes.
Mr. Hudson?
Yes.
Mr. Krant?
Yes.
Mr. Lambert?
Yes.
Mr. Rahman?
Yes.
Mr. Tagle?
Yes.
Mr. Aphidian?
Yes.
Motion carries. Okay, we're on to the next item, which is public comment for items on the current agenda. So do we have anyone in the audience that wants to comment on this one item that was on the agenda? Okay, go ahead, make your comment.
Everything is okay, only the timings, we did not decide it. It's urgent care from 7 to 11 or 7 to 9, or it will be 24 in future. 24 hours urgent care.
It's,
So,
it's-
city have any something?
we do not have any we don't have any ability to reduce the hours of an operation of a commercial building. If it was a different special use or a different kind of approval, we would have that limitation, but since it's permitted by ordinance, we do not have the ability to reduce the hours.
So if they want, they can increase the hours in future, correct?
Okay. Any others from the audience before I close that item? Seeing none, we'll move on to planning commission comment. Go ahead, Mr. Aphidian.
No comment.
John?
Nothing.
I had 2 items. Number 1, Mr. Savinet, do you have a new title now?
I do.
Okay. Why don't you share that with us?
Oh, yeah,
I'm the Community Development Director for the City of Troy.
Congratulations.
Nice.
So what does that mean?
That means I took on some more responsibility, including responsibility for the building department and the building official.
Very nice. Congratulations.
Been on your email since July.
It's not updated on the website, by the way, so,
It's not?
no.
Okay.
It still says planning director.
Okay.
Now that you have additional responsibilities, you might want to talk to staff the danger with computers of cutting and pasting is that I've noticed that over the past few months, the resolutions are awkward because it looks like things are cut and pasted
Yeah.
in the wrong spot, so.
I wish I could point the finger at somebody else, Mr. Lambert, but I can't. It lies on me.
It goes to you.
Yeah. I'm the one who's not very good at cutting and pasting.
That's it.
You had a second one?
That was it, the second.
Oh, okay.
Kathy? Anything?
No, thank you.
Ms. Fowler?
Nothing, thank you.
All right.
Nothing, thank you.
Nothing, the only thing I'd say is usually Brent would blame me, and it's my, part of my job is to take the hit, so it's my fault, I ignored one.
Okay. Brent, final word?
No.
Nothing from me. Meeting's over.